question which every one of us is grappling with is, what is a risk that we can take as we go back into the world? What's a risk we must absolutely avoid if we wish to keep the coronavirus far away from us? Jonathan Kay joins us live at this moment. I want to give you first a sense of his report, which is generating a lot of traction, spoken of highly, deals with how much of exposure you need to have with somebody who has already contracted the coronavirus for you to catch the coronavirus. Also, who ends up being a super spreader? That's a question I've been thinking a lot about. Why is it that patient 31 in South Korea, for example, or people in the Tablighi Jamaat in Delhi or in the market in Chennai, how did some instances become super spreaders, and how is it that some people like Kanika Kapoor, who you may remember, can come in touch with a lot of people and yet not end up spreading the virus to others? So we'll build on some of the questions that Jonathan Kay is looking at very, very closely. It's an interesting conversation, I promise you that. But before that, let's show a report that we've put together which really compiles and condenses the work that Jonathan has put in the public domain. Here it is.
Recognize the virus isn't going to go away. So we've all got to be on alert. It's really something that every single individual in the country has to be aware of, that this virus is a continuing threat.
A return to crowded spaces is still a long way away. But as lockdowns ease up, businesses open, and people step out, life as it was when 2020 began wouldn't be the same anymore. So what changes? What's the new normal? Living with the virus? How does life continue? Data shows that successful infection is a combination of exposure to virus load over a period of time. So be aware, take precautions, don't drop the guard. Epidemiologists analyze data from different countries to see where people caught the virus, indoors or outdoors. The top 5 places where people did contract the infection are: home, when someone within the family falls sick; workplaces, especially when office environments are enclosed spaces with poor air circulation and high density of people; at social gatherings, birthdays or wedding parties, funerals, religious gatherings, they've all been responsible for a broader chunk of transmission across countries; public transport, multiple high-touch surfaces and high density of people makes this a perfect ground for community transmission; restaurants or bars, another enclosed space with multiple high-touch areas and usually filled with people closely spaced together, talking loudly, which results in more saliva droplets in the air. So what is common is that all of them are indoor spaces with limited air exchange or recycled air and lots of people. So the grocery store one visits isn't the area one needs to fret over. And no, a quick workout in the park isn't as dangerous as long as one maintains physical distance and takes precautions. But it is time to rethink social lives. Big boisterous parties with lots of people might be replaced with more intimate meals with close friends and family. Outdoor areas would be preferred over indoor enclosed spaces for gatherings. Technology will still be used to connect with loved ones, especially those at high risk. Consumption patterns, be it a clothes shopping spree or jet-setting around the world, may change. As people move back out more freely, remember the risks. So keep that mask on, wash your hands regularly, and stop touching your face.
Jonathan Kay joins us now live from Toronto. I want to start, Jonathan, with the focus on super spreader events. You've looked at the 4 dozen plus super spreader events globally in this COVID-19 crisis. Give our viewers a sense of what turns a person or an event into a super spreader. Why is it that somebody gives the disease to so many more people and somebody doesn't? Explain what you know.
Well, yeah, I looked at originally several dozen, and now my database is up to about 100 because people from around the world, including India, are sending me new information. There has been a lot of focus on who the people are who are super spreaders. I was more interested in the behaviors because we can't change who we are as people. We can't change our biological factors, but we can change the way we behave. So I was extremely interested in what are the behaviors that are linked to super spreader events. And what I found was that if you look at the super spreader events that are covered in the medical literature and in normal journalism from around the world, it tends to be the same kind of behavior. It tends to be boisterous, socially intimate behavior, almost invariably indoors. It tends to be people face-to-face, at close range, often at parties, at funerals, at religious gatherings, and a very specific kind of behavior. It doesn't always matter how close they are packed. What matters is if they are face-to-face and if they have agitated respiration, because that's when they exchange the disease most easily, apparently, according to what we know about super spreader events.
So I just want to summarize your research findings. The biggest super spreader events have been typically at weddings, birthday parties, face-to-face business networking, religious gatherings, sports events, meat processing facilities, ships at sea, singing groups and funerals. And when you compile it like that, and I like the way you're approaching this research topic, you can actually see a trend, a pattern. So what you almost certainly don't want to be at, Jonathan, is a closed room with a lot of people together in close social contact with each other. Is that the large message that you're trying to send?
It is, but I want to emphasize, first of all, I need to emphasize that there are limitations on my research. I was limited by the data I had, which is a lot of it was just taken from newspapers and journalistic sources. And secondly, people should listen to public health officials, doctors and epidemiologists. I have some specialty in engineering and thermodynamics and that sort of thing, but I'm not a doctor. But I also want to emphasize that we all know to avoid gatherings, but the particular kind of gathering where, for instance, funerals, when I look at the description of funerals that were super spreader events, it isn't just people sitting there, all looking in the same direction. They tend to be very socially intimate affairs. People are grieving, hugging, kissing, weeping. This is typically very socially intimate behavior. When we talk about cruises, we know that cruises can be places where there are parties on board. Weddings, engagement parties, all of these are in my database. It always is the same kind of behavior. The exception, I think, you mentioned meat processing plants. I'm not sure we know why meat processing plants are so overrepresented. It may have something to do with the environment or the pathogens, underlying factors there. But certainly, workplaces where people are distanced from each other, where there is not a lot of face-to-face contact.
So let's come to that now, because we've laid out first the kind of settings that you absolutely need to avoid, close, social, intimate settings. Now let's come to what is okay, because remember, as we go back into the world, taking some risk is inevitable. And you have to live with the virus, as the Prime Minister and Indian world leaders have been saying. So Jonathan, what are the kind of activities that you think that people can go out and engage in and try at the same time to keep the virus as far away from them as possible?
So I would never presume to tell people what they can and can't do, but I can say that when I looked at the data in terms of super spreader events, there were many kinds of activities that you might think would be super spreader events, but which were not.
Like what?
And those, for instance, sitting in an airplane. The IATA put out a report that they have difficulty finding any incident of a super spreader event on an airplane. The reason I think is, first of all, when you're on an airplane, you are very close to other people, but typically you are sitting parallel to each other. It is not boisterous face-to-face contact like at a sports event or a party or a dance club or a singing club. The respiration typically is low. you're not generating a lot of droplets. Sometimes people will try to talk to you, but generally, in long
What
flights,
else? So you're saying flying isn't necessarily as unsafe as it seems. What else seems more unsafe but you think is okay within the realm of what would be an acceptable risk?
Office work, sitting in a movie theater, going
Why
to a
is being in
store.
office not dangerous to you?
Because typically, if you're staring at a computer screen, if your respiration is low, if you're not having face-to-face contact, I'm having difficulty in my database finding many incidents. There are a few. There's a few call centers. There's a call center in South Korea. There's a call center in Jamaica. There are some construction sites in Singapore that I found in my database. But typically, work environments that do not involve people engaged in boisterous face-to-face contact, like in a bar.
Offices aren't as dangerous. You also said going to theatre isn't dangerous. Now, theatre is a closed environment. That sounds quite scary to me. Why do you think it's not so dangerous?
So it sounds dangerous because you're so close. But think of the behavior that is expected at a theater or a movie or a symphony or an opera, anything like that. You're expected to be quiet and watch. You are not expected to be loud and noisy and talk to the person next to you. That sort of behavior will get you thrown out of the theater. So
and you're also saying that running is okay. So if you're running and you're socially distant from the next guy, being outdoors, running isn't unsafe in your view.
Well, sports can be dangerous because sports, your respiration is agitated and you can be emitting large droplets. However, you're outdoors, your distance. The good thing about being outdoors is typically you have control of your space. When you're indoors, you often don't have control of your space. So for instance, here in Canada, I tell people I think I would feel perfectly comfortable playing tennis, but I would not feel comfortable playing squash. Because squash, you are an indoor enclosed space. Typically, a person can be very close to you. So outdoor sports where you can control your spacing to other people, to my mind, I see no evidence in the super spreader database that I've looked at.
This
that
is a very, very interesting insight. All of what you said is priceless in the current context. Squash is more dangerous than tennis. Going into a movie hall or watching or being in a flight isn't as dangerous as being at a wedding, for example. Jonathan, we wish you the best for the data that you're compiling because it throws up trends when you put the whole global picture in front of you. It's not about person A or person B, it's the behavior and the insights that you get from the behavior. I do really hope that we can have Jonathan Kay back on our channel as this database throws up more interesting insights. For the time being, Jonathan Kay, more power to you. Really enjoyed this interaction. Thank you so much for your time. We hope to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is where I wrap up the news track tonight. I hope you enjoyed the journey. I look forward to seeing you at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening when we will have the Jumpstart conversation with some really sharp economic minds who will deal. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.